At this point, the chair would like to call to order meeting to order. I think we have a quorum of the committee and present. This is the Committee on Closing the Gap, June 21st, 2012 meeting. Committee meeting is now called to order. Item Agenda 1 is welcome, and committee meeting chair's overview of what's taken place since our last meeting. I have no report. I'd like to welcome all those that are present here today. Once again, remind everyone that we're in video transmitted, and try to keep our cell phones quieted and be mindful of the fact that we're being webcast. Okay, item agenda 2 is consideration of adoption of minutes from the March 21st, 2012 Closing the Gap meeting. Everyone has had that available to them prior to the meeting today. Is there any questions or comments concerning the previous meeting of this committee? If not, the chair would entertain a motion that we adopt the committee minutes meeting of March 21st, 2012 on Closing the Gaps. Do I hear a motion? It's been moved. Is second? Second. Motion's been made and seconded. Do I hear all those in favor indicate by saying aye? Any opposed? Motion carries. Agenda item 3 is public testimony on items relating to the Committee on Closing the Gap. What I'm going to want in the future with regard to public testimony, and I'd like to see if maybe Linda or someone could have this done for me. If there's anybody in the future that would like to make a public comment prior to this meeting, I'd like them to sign an agenda, if that's agreeable, just to have a sign up where they can sign up, and then before we convene this committee meeting, that I know who those individuals are. I know that I haven't put that in place prior to this meeting, but they will.
I think Linda can share with you the process in place that allows for that. I'm
there may be
assuming no one signed up.
It may be that process may be already in place, but that's what I'm accustomed to doing in other.
Yes, we do have a process that's in place. It's available from our website, but it does require folks to sign up 24 hours in advance of the meeting. That way we have notice. This also applies to written testimony as well.
Okay.
And then we post the written testimony online, and we provide the board members with copies. So we did not receive any requests for these committee meetings this morning or today.
Good.
Or this afternoon.
Chairman.
Yes.
Linda, can we clarify that? People could also call the office 24 hours in advance and request
Yes,
time.
we have an online form,
Right.
and they can call Judy Schooling and register to testify. Judy will send them a form so that we can get all their information.
Right. So, but really any means of communication, they could sign up for that. If they send us a letter, if they call
Email,
the office,
fax.
if they email, it's not just people that are on the internet, right?
Correct.
Okay.
And this is this board policy in terms of how this is handled?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
The board did not adopt the process. The staff developed the procedures in response to sunset recommendations.
But prior to sunset, we did not have any type of
We did not have
place.
a formal process for the general public to sign up to provide testimony, but we always allowed for public testimony. If somebody was interested in addressing the board, then that would be up to the committee chair or the board chair. And so we did have public testimony. It just wasn't as visible to the general public on how to do it.
And that's limited to 5 minutes, correct?
We have a 3-minute time limit. It's a 3-minute time limit, and we do keep time. At least the April board meeting was the first time that we implemented this, so we'll grow with it and see how it goes the next time. But
Could you see to it that the members of this committee have a copy of that policy? It may be available somewhere where we have it.
we can print it out right now and provide it to you.
Thank you. And I want notified 24 in advance as to whether or not there are people and how many of those people and the nature of what their comments are going to be.
Yes, sir.
Chair of
They
the
do have to
committee.
specify what agenda item they want to speak on, so you'll have that.
Thank you.
Thanks.
No public testimony, therefore we'll go to item agenda 4, consideration and approval of the annual report for closing the gap by 2015 progress report. Chair recognizes Susan Brown, Assistant Commissioner, Planning and Accountability. She will present a review of the 2012 progress report, which is provided under separate cover. At this time, Chair recognizes Susan Brown.
Thank you, and I'm going to go through this fairly quickly for go over the presentation on the progress we've made. You've seen parts of this as we go forward with the enrollment and then the success. This report actually just kind of pulls all those pieces together, and so I'm going to provide you a little bit of detail with that one. Okay, Mary. This shows the percentage. The first set of percentage is the percent change from fall 10 to fall 11, and then the last percentage shows that public universities had 27% of the total change. Career colleges 48%. A lot of that 48% actually is because we have a lot more career colleges that are submitting their information to us. It's not necessarily that big of a growth. We just have, I think we went from 80-something institutions up to 130 institutions that are now reporting to us. So a lot of that is kind of a false bump.
And that's a recent requirement that they report.
Right.
So prior to that, there was no requirement that we receive that data.
This shows how we're doing on our closing the gaps on our enrollment, and obviously we're doing very well. We're way above the target. And then for the Hispanic enrollment growth, we're actually doing, most of the growth was in Hispanics. They had 6% of the total of a change, but they had 63% of the growth. One thing I do want to mention here is that for the white enrollment has declined. This is 2 years in a row where white enrollment has declined statewide, and that is a concern.
But
Go back.
it's really a function of the demographics of Texas.
A lot of it is a function of the demographics, yes. I mean, demographics of the state are changing. However, we want to continue to enroll. It's not part of this, but in the past when we've done studies and we looked at students coming directly from high school into college, that sort of thing, white students do better. If we separate that out by economically disadvantaged and non-economically disadvantaged, the economically disadvantaged white students look extremely similar to the economically disadvantaged Hispanic and African American. It's all across the board the same, except for the Asians, and they continue to go at a very high rate. African American, we have surpassed our goal. This is one of the good news. We've had a big increase in the African American enrollment.
Can I ask a quick question, just so that I know? So does this take into account kids that are going out of state?
No, this is in-state.
And do we have any understanding of what that is? I mean, one of my perceptions is that there's a lot of them going out of state.
We have looked at National Student Clearinghouse data 2 or 3 different times. Most recently in 2009, we had somebody that would pay for National Student Clearinghouse data. And we had about 7% statewide of the students graduating from high school were going out of state. So, and it obviously affects the high schools right along the border more than, more interior or high income, Highland Park, Eanes School District. Some of those show quite a few that are going out of state.
Bobby, we've actually looked at this issue, and there was actually a study that was done recently about the out-of-state rates of different students from different states, and actually Texas is close to the bottom in the percentage of its high school graduates that go to school out of state. I think the lowest was California, and Texas was in the bottom 10. So And I think it is around 7 or 8% of high school graduates who go to college go out of state.
So has that been stable, or is that changing, or do
I
we
don't
not
know
know
that
in the
we have
last couple of
longitudinal
years?
data.
We have spotty data. In 2001, it was about 6%. Now it's about 7%. So it's
It's
very
important.
slight increase, but not.
It's important to remember that Texas is surrounded by states that are losing college-age population: Louisiana, Arkansas, Oklahoma, and New Mexico. So they are all those states are aggressively recruiting in Texas.
It's actually part of the Oklahoma, their higher ed long-term plan was to entice students from other states to come to Oklahoma. So it is an explicit part of their plan.
And I guess I was at a high school graduation in Dallas a couple of weeks ago, and they were announcing where each of the students was going, and I was shocked, to your point, how many of them were going to Oklahoma, and not just OU, but I mean a variety of different schools in Oklahoma. I mean, it was, and I understand up in North Texas, I don't see that down in Central Texas, but up there apparently that's very, very prevalent, and it was just kind of surprising as to the high percentage of that specific graduating class that were going out of state.
In terms of Oklahoma, at one time, the Oklahoma higher ed plan had a title that essentially meant, let's steal everyone else's smart kids.
Wow.
And I can tell you from my two kids and many of their friends, I know that Oklahoma would send them information saying, if you come here, we'll give you $100K, a computer, and something or other else if you're a top student, and sight unseen. But another factor in the case of North Texas is just the geography. They're close or proximate. And one reason I think Texas has more students staying in state is also just because it's a very large state. If you think, I lived in New York at one time. If you lived in New York, you could go to multiple states and 2 hours away. The equivalent of going from Dallas to Houston would be somewhat like going from New York to Virginia. So the geography plays a role in some of those statistics as well, but the vast majority of our students stay home.
Bobby, if I may, sometimes I feel like half of the Wichita Falls have moved here from Oklahoma, and so their kids want to go back to school where their folks went to school.
I would like to comment also, though, that this is a significant concern on the part of a lot of the colleges, as you mentioned, that are on the border, particularly with regard to tracking those students and making sure that certain institutions are given credit, particularly community colleges, when their students go through and then transfer out of state, as to whether or not we go back.
And we're actually working on a project with NCHEMS and Houston Endowment that they're funding. We're looking at, and I've talked to the National Student Clearinghouse about our community college students and the transferring out, and it would only cost about $50,000 to get the information, because so many of our institutions are full members of the National Student Clearinghouse that we would not get charged for them. So we're working on something statewide now to get the high school students and going on to college. Comes out to about $180,000 a year to get that information from National Student Clearinghouse. So
And we would have to have the permission.
we would have to have permission
from
of TEA and
use
that sort of
data.
thing. But for just looking at our community college students, I think we'll be able to maybe even cut that down further, because after we match them in state, match them to some of the other things, maybe we can reduce the number of students that we actually need to track, and they charge on a per record basis.
When do you
So
think,
we're working on that. I don't know.
you don't know when you'd have that
I
implemented?
don't know
to
when
the
we'd
point
have that
where those
information, but we're working on trying to get that and see if we can get that price down as low as possible so that we can actually afford to track it at least 1 or 2 years, so that we get a good sense of where we're at on that.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Susan, continue.
Okay, next slide. Hispanic growth, even though on the earlier slide you saw that they were 63% of the growth, they are still not reaching what we call the target line for Hispanics. A lot of that, again, plays to the demographics. That is such a fast growing part of the population, and that's part of that reason. This is one of the slides that I wanted to show you. It takes each of the three major ethnic categories and divides them by gender. And if you will notice that the males are going at a lower rate all across the board. That is a major concern. The good news is that at least African American males have gone up 1.1, Hispanics 0.4%. So they're going up. The white males have decreased 0.9%. It's almost a full percentage point on the white males, whereas in the white females, the same thing. And that does play into the demographics of the state, as the commissioner talked about. We're going to move on to success, and right now the good news is we're above our target line on success, and so we hope to continue that with the outcomes-based funding and providing more of this. So we're on the move up. For the African American students, this is the bachelor's, associates, and certificates, and we're actually below the line. We started out kind of above the line, and we actually, in 2005, you can see that tracking line, the target line actually takes an upward slope to it, and because we felt like our target was actually too low, and so we made an adjustment in 2005, as we did to some of the other targets. And so at that point, then we've gone below and we have not maintained. So even though they're ahead on the enrollment, they're behind on the success. And that's one of the areas that we really need to concentrate on. And I know Judy's group has been doing a lot of things, working with TSU and Prairie View and some of the other historically black institutions to try and improve those numbers.
Go ahead, Nick.
Isn't the obvious opportunity to make up on this looking at associate degrees from our community colleges?
It is. They are included in here, as are certificates. One-year certificates are included in here also.
Right. And
So, yes,
I mean, I've
that
heard,
is.
since I've been on this board, I've heard a lot of focus from this agency about getting the community colleges to get people to that associate's degree before they transfer, so that we're
There-
getting credit for that associate's degree.
We actually give them credit. There's something called reverse transfer.
Okay.
And I think 2 years ago, I can't remember. Anyway, there's Apply Texas, where students come in and they can apply to multiple institutions, and they can check a box now if they're a transfer student. If they want to have their hours reverse transferred back to the community college, so when they complete 30 hours, and now there's a law that says if a student has completed a total of 90 hours, the university must submit back to the sending community college their hours so that they can look through, and a lot of times those students will have received enough credit in one area or another to get an associate degree, and they can go ahead and award that associate degree at that point. So that way it helps the student if they don't make it all the way to the bachelor's, then they do have a credential.
But that still
So-
requires that there's approval to send the hours back. And
Right.
So that's really the catch right now. The current Applied Texas requires the student affirmatively give permission to send their data back to the institution. And the commissioner was somewhere recently where they found that they could actually change the form so that the student had to say they did not want it sent back. And so we're pursuing that possibility now, which might increase the likelihood of that data. But the student benefits because they would actually receive a degree that they did not receive otherwise. But the Privacy Act prevents one institution to send another institution transcripts, of course, if the student doesn't give permission.
So is that something that we can change here at the coordinating
It's
board?
the federal law.
Well, yeah, but the commissioner came back from another state where they found a different approach that we think would yield better results, and we're working with Bill to make sure that we can change the form. If we do that, it would be taken to the Applied Texas group for admissions for not this fall, but next fall. That would be the first time it would go into effect, but we're actively pursuing it. And this just came to our attention within the last few days.
You would change the form from an opt-in to an opt-out.
Yes,
Right.
yes, sir.
Got it.
Next.
Commissioner.
I just wanted to point out that as I read these graphs, it seems like we've got two contrasting challenges in the African American and Hispanic communities. In the African American community, we're enrolling plenty of students. We're above the trend line in enrollments, but we're well below in terms of the students actually graduating.
Correct.
For Hispanics, we need to enroll more students, but once they enroll, they actually graduate at high levels.
And this shows that we're now on track, on target
Yeah.
for reading the Hispanic success. And
Susan, what was the rationale in '05 to change that metric on the targets?
the metric for the targets is set at, for 2015, for the enrollment, is set at 5.7% of the population. We got some new population estimates at that point. So that's, you saw a lot of increase on the enrollment side from that. On the others, we had set the targets in looking at them, thinking, well, they'd be really hard to reach. And when we were, when we were surpassing the target, then we decided that we probably needed to continue to make it a stretch goal. That was the whole purpose of closing the gap, was to make sure that we had a stretch goal. And so we wanted to continue to do that.
The fundamental reason, in my view, Susan, was because the success goal was set as increased by 50%, I recall, but we had raised an issue initially with closing the gaps. If we met our participation goal, we could hit that success target just because we were enrolling a lot more students, but without really improving success. So we later talked to the board about this and said, you know, we're enrolling more students. We're going to have more graduates. So let's really make it a stretch in the terms of truly improving success. And so that was a fundamental, I think, consideration by the board at that time. Let's make sure people are really graduating at a greater rate than they were previously.
Yeah, and the only thing is that I would recommend is that there be an asterisk if you're going to present this to people on our meeting our own goals, that was adjusted in 05 upwards. So that we'll actually meet or exceed all of the original expectations and maybe meet or exceed the adjusted expectations based upon a decision made in 05 to adjust upward.
Right. Now, the enrollment, the original target was always set at 5.7% of the population.
Right.
So
I'm just looking at the last two slides.
Okay.
Yeah, the last two slides. So, I mean, somebody that's going to see this for the first time in 2015, they need to understand that the coordinating board in 05 changed its original goals upward and may still meet those, but certainly would have met the original goal.
Yeah. And originally the board actually set a number based on 5.7%, but they had an actual number. And then
Right, it was
later on it was
500,000.
adjusted. Say we have a new demographic forecast, which is much higher. So they took that one number and adjusted it by the 5.7%. So we actually, with the original goal, we would have met it by now in terms of.
It was 500,000, and we're over that already. So we have already
So the board's been
reached
very
that
aggressive.
one.
And I just think that when we get to the final report, that needs to be in there so that the policymakers say, okay, they blew way past the original goal and they set a higher standard for themselves.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, wasn't that accelerated closing the gaps?
No, that was accelerated closing of the gaps didn't come along until 2010. So this was
Okay.
back before that even.
One of I think that the best decisions this board made in creating their plan is that they said we are going to revisit these goals to make sure they continue to make sense and that we're not going to be self-satisfied because we set a goal that we've achieved, but maybe it doesn't get us to where we need to be. And I think that was very wise on their part. And that's, you know, has been a discussion at least two significant points since the board adopted the plan. And then the third time is with the accelerated plan, Mr. Hahn, in terms of looking at how we can really take this to the next level. So there've really been three key points.
Susan, does the 5.7% of our general population being college enrolled, is that
No, it's 5.7% of the total population.
the total population? Yeah, being in college.
Right.
Okay. Now, does that put us at the forefront or in the top 10 of percent
No.
of the country?
No,
Or-
it doesn't.
Or just parity?
About,
Okay, so
about average.
So our goal is just to put us in the ballpark. It's not putting us at the top.
That's correct. The original Closing the Gaps committee felt that the original 5.7% came out to 500,000 students. At the time, the projections had us increasing by about 200,000. So that was more than double what we would have expected. People thought that that was a very stretch goal, and they didn't want to put a goal out there that was so far out of range that everybody just kind of gave up from the beginning. And so that's why the 5.7%, because it was a huge jump. We were at about 4.9% on each of the different population groups at the time.
And just that gap between the 4.9 and 5.7% with our population at the time meant 180,000 students. But just to get to there, we would have had that many more students enrolled.
Just due to the population changes.
Well, just the difference between the goal for 5.7% versus the 4.9, that 0.8% equated to 180,000 of our population.
Mr. Chairman, I want to go back to the decrease in the white students' enrollment. I think we're being too quick to dismiss that as a part of the demographics. Yes, the Hispanic and minorities probably present more challenge, and Hispanics as a part of the total demographics is growing faster. But the actual numbers are decreased. We're not talking about the percentage here. With looking at the Texas population, I don't think we have any less white students here today than we had a year ago. And to see that for the first time, even though it's a small number, I hope that doesn't become a trend.
I'm really glad you're asking that. You moved on, but I did want to mention that one thing we've learned in the past is when you have severe problems in the economy, many people go back to school either to finish or to complete degrees. We know there's data that shows that students who have at least college degrees are much less likely to be unemployed. So we do need to do some analysis to see, because we do know that the white population had a higher incidence of completion of degrees, that we may have had fewer of those students returning to school. We don't know, but there's several points of analysis that we should look at. That the population of white students has decreased in sort of the traditional 15 to 34 college range. But I think we should specifically look at it.
Just let's make sure we watch them and not have it become a trend.
I agree with you, Munir. I think that's something that we need to closely watch and make sure that we don't have a trend. And then if we do, we need to ask ourselves, is it more than just demographics? I think that's what you're...
Yes, exactly.
Mr. Chairman, I got a question. 2-year college associate degree is called closing the gap. 4-year college bachelor degree is called closing the gap. Are we not taking credit of the 2 years of the bachelor degree and can say that these people have closed the gap also? If somebody has gone to college for 2 years, they did not get associate degree, are we defining close the gap same way as other states are defining? Does everybody define close the gap same? Associate degree is also closing the gap?
Associate degrees are, for us, part of closing gaps. One of the big differences...
And certificates.
And certificates.
One of the big differences between Texas and the other states is Texas is one of the few states that actually includes certificates from the community colleges as a part of our goals. A lot of other states only counted the associate degree and bachelor's, that sort of thing. We include the certificate, those workforce certificate programs, in what we're looking at also.
So our numbers look better than everybody else's numbers.
When we report federally, there's a standard definition, and so pretty much everybody is going to be reporting the same thing. But a lot of the statistics you see will be different if you look at national numbers versus ours, because they are not including the certificates, and we do.
So that means we are worse than what we are really seeing. We are way behind other states as it is. But if we calculate the number of people who are getting certificate and reduce our number by that number, will be worse than other states.
Okay, the national numbers that you look that compare Texas to the other states includes associate and bachelor's. Those already have the certificates pulled out of them.
Oh, okay.
Those do not include the certificates. mainly because there's a lot of states that do not collect any information on certificates, so they don't have it to give. I think that is changing. There's starting to be more and more states that will collect certificate programs.
There are also
but
a number of states that don't have significant community college systems as well.
there are some states that have 3 community colleges total, so, or fewer.
Carol?
I feel that certificate and associate degree should get 1 weightage average, and bachelor's degree should get 2, master's should get 3 weighting average to count towards closing the gap, to be fair. Otherwise, we can open more community colleges. We can double our community colleges and start giving people degrees in certificate in 2 years, and we'll be ahead of everybody else.
Well, we need to take into account, for example, there was a very large study of over 100,000 students done in Florida a few years ago that pointed out that there are a number of fields in which getting a certificate at a community college has far greater economic benefits for that achiever than getting either an associate's degree or a baccalaureate in certain fields. So I think actually Texas is doing the right thing in valuing certificates as much as it does any other post-secondary credential. So I think I think other states are starting to catch up to us. We sent you an article last week that pointed out that the feds and other states are beginning to recognize how important certificates are. So I think we're ahead of the pack in valuing them as much as we do associates and baccalaureates.
Right.
It's really about being gainfully employed and being taxpayers. That's what we need. And I know a lot of unemployed PhDs.
To recognize Mr. Hans.
Susan, as far as the teacher education, we're showing a downward spiral.
Yes. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going forward. Well, that's all right. Yes, I know which one you're talking about.
It looks like it's roughly at the level now that it was in 2005. I mean, has there been any study as to why that is? Because we all know that if we don't have adequately trained, educated teachers, that it's going to be impossible to deal with the other issues that we have. And I guess my concern is with all the impact that we've had in budgets with school districts and everything. You know, when I talk to young graduates, they're having trouble finding a job because the districts have either put a hiring freeze on or whatever. So, I mean, aren't there other things that are influencing this other than just?
And there is, and that's one of the things for the teachers. That's a separate process over and above getting a degree. So what I think we're finding, looking at our numbers of degrees being awarded versus the number of initial certifications, what we think is happening without doing a huge survey of all the students, that sort of thing, what we think is happening is that those students are not going ahead and getting their certification, because in order to get your certification, you have to pass the test, you have to get fingerprinted, you have to have an FBI background check, you have to do all these other steps that you have to pay for. So what we think might be happening is because of the tightening of the economy and the fact that school districts are doing layoffs and that kind of stuff, that we have a lot of students who are just not going through all the rest of the process.
Another thing that's happening too in relationship to teachers, and Susan is correct, they finish the programs but they don't get the certificate. They don't go the next mile that they have to. But districts with the hiring freeze are also tending now to only want to hire seasoned teachers because they are under so much pressure for student performance that these new graduates coming out are having a struggling time to get a job, and that's going to affect your numbers.
Mm-hmm. And also, as you can see, that last little downturn for FY 2011 may not be complete. We get this information from the State Board of Educator Certification, and they have a lag in their reporting periods. kind of going out. So we expect that number to come up a little bit. It probably will not come up a lot, unfortunately. But I think there are multiple reasons for that.
Well, I mean, there must be, because when you look at, at one point we were above the target, and then it capped out and is just, I guess, for 5-6 years has been flat to a downward trend. There's something wrong.
Well, one of the things that we've heard, a lot of that growth was in what we call alternative certification programs, where it's not through traditional programs, they go back. A lot of school districts have made the decision to not hire alt-cert, or they'll hire those directly from high school or from college. Well, they obviously want the more experienced teachers first, then they go directly through a university program, and that there's a lot of trepidation about hiring the alt-cert teachers.
Okay.
I think part of that is because they don't. From the SPEC data, it shows those alt-cert teachers don't necessarily stay in the field as long. They will leave before the other teachers do.
Are you referring to the ones that have another major but then just get a certification in
No,
teaching?
they go through a whole separate process. They not only have another major, but they may have been in the workforce. They come back and they go through a lot of the education service centers have them. Some of our community colleges have them. It just gives them those education courses, and then they do.
They're really trained in one summer. They come with a degree, and they're trained in a summer session, or depending where they came in the fall, and then they're put out in the field for 1 year to teach as a teacher of record. So they don't have the same intense work that a student does coming out of a college program. And so it's very compacted, is what happens. And the reason, like Susan says, that districts don't necessarily want to hire them because they're not staying as long doesn't mean they don't have the potential to be very strong teachers. But the districts that are hiring them have their own alternative certification program, so they've grown their own. They know who they have in the field. But if you're not in a ISD-based alternative cert program, it's getting harder to get them employed as well.
Any other questions? Not. Susan, continue, please.
Keep going. Excellence, this has been a real struggle to define the whole time. Current standings, we have 0 in the top 10. This hasn't changed for many times. The next slide. This is.
The commissioners mentioned from time to time that we seem to have some increase in individual programs that are increasing in the national ranking. So we seem to have more, this program at this institution or this program at another one that are showing up in top rankings, but we're not seeing it for overall institutions in the way Susan mentioned. So.
Yeah, and that, to go back again, I'm like a lot of people, I don't take the U.S. News and World Rankings very seriously, except in one way, and that is peer reputation. Mm-hmm. That's when they survey college presidents and deans in given fields, and they rate the quality of institutions. And if you look at that standard, we're doing better than the final rankings indicate. I think UT Austin is in the top 10 in reputation among peers. A&M is getting very close. And it's important to point out that the only state that has more than one public institution in the top 10 is California. No other state has more than one institution. So if you go by the reputational ranking, we do have one public university in the top 10, and other institutions made progress. For example, there was a report that came out a couple of weeks ago, and it ranked universities that had been created since 1965. And we had 2 or 3 institutions among the top 50 or 75. UT Dallas was the most highly regarded, but UT San Antonio was in that group as well. So we need to come up with a better definition of what excellence is.
Next.
And you had made the point about individual programs, so a lot of people may not realize Texas Woman's really has a well-regarded occupational therapy program, and that sometimes gets lost in the shuffle. And there are other institutions who have similar pockets of excellence.
This is just a reminder that the research goal is 6.5% of the obligations. It's not a dollar amount. I will show you the dollars, but it is a percentage of the federal obligations. This is the research expenditures chart, and we have far surpassed the research expenditures. Next.
Particularly after Monday.
And this is FY 2008, and actually the FY 2009 federal research obligations were released this past Monday. So this matches what's in the report. We'll get all that changed before the report becomes final. But this was just changed, and two things happened on Monday. Those were released for FY 2009, and Texas actually dropped back down to 5.6% of the federal obligations, and at the same time A&M announced that they are getting $175 million in federal grants. Where that's going to drop out, I don't really know. So, but obviously the A&M grant is going to be, the fact that they're being named one of the biotechnology, what is it? Biosecurity centers, only one of 3 in the nation, is obviously going to be a big boon for the research over there and for
Huge.
Texas. It is just really big. So anyway, that covers all of that. But both of those announcements were made on Monday. I found it a little bit ironic, but at the same time we dropped down.
Susan, were the excellence targets, were those something that was originally set up when Closing the Gaps was begun?
Yes, it was.
Okay.
That concludes your report, Susan.
It does. Do you have any questions?
Chair would entertain any other additional questions at this time for Susan Brown. If not, this is an action item.
I did have a question, David. You made mention of a single program, and part of what we've done is we asked the institutions to self-identify something that they're doing exceptional, maybe not just in the state, but maybe even worldwide.
Correct.
I don't think it would hurt to put additional information into these reports saying TWU OT program #1 in the nation, in the ranking, et cetera, et cetera. We're literally, they were the top 1 or 2 program in the country or the world. Because when you put this out, I think that there's the other story that we need to tell, that if you're going to go train in this, the place to go is Texas.
Yeah. No, I think that's an important point, and one reason the board chose to include some of that information originally is the board had tended to focus on things that were problematic and felt, correctly, that we need to focus on some of the positive things that are going on as well. And you've seen that on your agenda, and that we have the recognition of excellence. I just learned this week that UT Austin, by an advertising source, is the #1 program in advertising in the country. They've always been 2, 3, or 4, but this is the first time they've ever been #1. So some of those things are very important, and we do have a number of institutions that are doing things that it's sort of hidden, and more students need to know, and that they might choose to go to a different school in state even if they knew that another school had one of the best programs. We'll do that.
And beyond that, is it common practice for this board to issue a public proclamation recognizing that? I don't think that would be a bad thing for us to do, to recognize that an institution that what we have oversight of does something unusually very good.
That would be something that you could choose to do. I think to some extent you do it with this recognition of excellence at each board meeting. I'm glad to say I think we have enough programs, depending on how you set the standard, that it might be difficult to recognize everyone every time, but we could find a way to do that in a more systematic manner and make some recommendations to you.
I think that would be helpful.
If not, at this time, the chair would entertain a motion that we approve the annual report for Closing the Gap by 2015 progress report. Do I have a motion?
Moved.
Motion is made and seconded. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Like sign. There is none. Motion passes. We move on to agenda item 5, update on information that could provide to independent school districts regarding student transition to post-secondary education. This is something that I had requested Susan to begin work on earlier in the year, and I'd like to get a report on that. Would like to get a report on that this time.
Okay, and this is just an update. Actually, we had an ISD resume focus group meeting on May 31st, where we actually had some superintendents, some trustees, some counselors, college counselors, that sort of thing. We talked about the resume as it was written. They gave us some good suggestions. We're also, one of the other things is we are going to be working with the Texas Tribune. They showed an interest in putting this information out, and so they were going to be able to get it out there, they think, by mid-July, maybe the end of July. So we're working with them to get them the data in the right format, that sort of thing, to get it out there. On another note, one of our college presidents from the Harlingen area is also a trustee for the school district down there, and he took this to their superintendents and started talking about how their high school were doing and how their school district was doing, and he was very certain that this information is not getting to the trustees of the school boards. So he is taking it also to giving a presentation with the ISD resume to the TASA, which is the School Board Members Association. And so we're going to be working with TASB. So he's going to be, K-12 things that I don't know all the acronyms. So he's going to be taking it to TASB, working with them, and so we're providing him some input and some information that he can share with all the others. So that's where we stand.
I want to make sure that, and I certainly want the staff to either join in or to comment on my comment at this time. We'll make sure that the coordinating board staff recognizes what I perceive as a very important thing for us to bring to light, and that's how prepared some of these students are when they leave high school, and to find some means of recognizing those districts that are doing a good job and those districts that are not doing such a good job. I think this is a way of highlighting and emphasizing what we think it's going to be necessary for students to leave with when they leave secondary education and going into higher education, so that those ISDs can allocate the resources necessary in order to make those numbers in terms of SAT scores and ACT scores go up, and to enable them to track the success of their students when they leave high school and go into college. I personally see some ISDs that are, I think, allocating resources that are not moving those numbers in the direction they need to go. Some of those resources are going to areas that are not moving the barometer in an upward direction.
And we're working, there's actually two different projects going on. One is in the Rio Grande Valley that they actually came to us because the higher ed institutions know the type of tracking that we're able to do. And so we're working with, there's a group of school districts and higher ed institutions in the valley where they are looking at their students and how prepared they are. And we're working with them, and actually we have a meeting set up Monday to work with some additional institutions in the Houston area. They just gave me a glimpse, so I'm not exactly sure what they're looking for at this point, but we're meeting with the Houston area people again on Monday to talk about some of the same sort of things.
The trustees and the ISDs, in my opinion, they know what campuses are underperforming. They know if they've got a campus within their district that's not meeting the state minimum requirements. But what I don't think they're aware of or know or have a means of finding out is how well their students are performing once they leave their ISDs.
And that's what we're trying to provide.
And that's what
right.
we need.
Mm-hmm.
And that needs to be highly publicized, and it needs to be, in my opinion, made very much visible in the eyes of the trustees.
And that was one of the benefits of working with the Texas Tribune, is because they have the ability to get that word out very broadly, and they tend to put focus on things and people start paying attention. So I think working with the Texas Tribune is going to be a really good thing to get that out there.
Any other information with regard to this report?
All we have.
I'd like for you to continue to make some reports in this area. Basically, every meeting, I want to know, or at least to me, I want to know where we're at. I want to see this being moved forward.
Okay.
And I do compliment you on the direction and the work you already have done. Thank you. Any other comments from board members? This is not an action item. It's information only. If not, we'll move on to, thank you, Susan. We'll move on to agenda item 6, matters relating to the Committee of Closing the Gap. 6A is consideration of adopting the staff recommendation to the committee relating to approval to issue a request for applications regarding new adult education innovation grants, amend and extend previously funded adult basic education innovative grants, and either extend current evaluation contracts or issue a request for application for evaluation of programs. Chair recognizes Dr. Judy Laredo, Assistant Commissioner, P through 16, and she'll present this item at this time.
Thank you, Dr. Golden. As Dr. Golden indicated, there are 3 parts to this agenda item. The first part of the agenda item is the request to put out an RFA in order to secure applications from institutions to promote a seamless transition of students from local adult education programs to training programs at the local community colleges or technical colleges, which is a huge population of students out there who need those basic skills that they can then make that transition. The second part, and let me also explain that previously you had granted permission for us to do this RFA, but we waited based on the work that we've done to let it out now, and because you had previously approved to move it last year, we are bringing it back so there's transparency and you will know where we are in the process. The second part is we've had programs out there that were funded. There are 7 projects that are currently funded, and because of their work, we would like to extend them for an additional year to advance and increase the number of students in their program. And lastly, all of our work that we are doing, we do evaluate. That's very key, especially right now with the ABE initiative. There's federal money on the table that TEA oversees with grants, and then we were awarded state money in order to leverage these programs. We have, of course, in our community colleges, 24 colleges do have ABE programs. So this is why this item is being brought to you so that we can move forward with it.
Conclude your report.
That concludes my report.
Any questions, comments at this time? If not, may I have a motion to adopt the staff recommendation to the committee relating to approval to issue a request for applications regarding new adult basic education innovation grants, amend and extend previously funded adult basic education innovation grants, and either extend current evaluation grants or issue a request for application for evaluations of programs. Chair entertains a motion at this time. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We'll move on to agenda item 6B, consideration of adopting the staff recommendation to the committee relating to approval of an additional year of funding for intensive programs for adult education students and amending and extending the contract for external evaluations. Judy Laredo will make the report at this time. Judy.
This is again a 2-part process. We currently have 10 programs that are funded. On the second page or the back page of this blue page, you will note the institutions that currently have these grants. We are requesting permission to increase their funding, and you'll notice the amount that will be awarded to each institution plus the total amount they would have received since their initial funding of 2010, 2011. We have learned a lot from these programs. Evaluation will be out in August. But one thing that I think I'd like to mention is that TEA has been looking very closely at this model that we have implemented. They are putting out a proposal. In fact, I think it's due today or due tomorrow to model what our work has done. So the purpose of our funding, the continued another year of funding to these programs, will be for sustainability, so that we can make sure that these programs are entrenched and that there are ways to move them across the state. But secondly, these programs are going to be asked to serve as mentors to the newly funded programs that TEA will also be funding. So that also expands our reach of the population, and we're also asking them to increase the number of students that they're serving by 15% with the additional funds that we are giving them. We also, again, will have to extend the contract for the evaluation of this design and of the programs we are implementing, and that is what this blue page is speaking to. That presents my item.
Judy, what happened to San Angelo? What happened to San Angelo?
I don't.
They didn't get funded for 2011 or 12?
It's based on the evaluation, and I think I don't remember exactly what the issue was.
Or they
with
did
the
not
program.
reapply?
No, I don't think they reapplied, and they're concluding their program. But I can get that information more specifically for you.
I just wondered if there was a particular reason, maybe it failed there, or they didn't see any progress.
No, it isn't that programs fail. Sometimes there's challenges, and because of where they are with their program, they may not be seeking additional money because they want to finish out what they have. This is a pretty big obligation when you then become a mentor to other programs that are going to be out in the state, in addition to the fact of increasing the population that you're currently serving from where you are. So it depends on the challenges that they might have been facing.
Any other questions or comments? If not, may I have a motion to adopt the staff recommendation to the committee? Motion's been made. Do I hear a second? Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Agenda item 6C is consideration of adopting the staff recommendation to the committee relating to approval to issue a request for applications regarding new developmental education demonstration projects and either extend current evaluation contracts or issue a request for applications for evaluations of programs. Chair recognizes Dr. Judy Loreto at this time.
This again is the same item in that you had given previous approval for us to fund institutions this year, this academic year we're in right now. We chose not to fund this year because we didn't want to develop more demonstration sites. What we wanted to do was take what we have learned from the demonstration sites that you currently have approved that have been in place for the last 2 years and fund other institutions to implement what we know is working. And so what we are doing is utilizing the funding that we have to fund up to 15 more institutions. The rider makes it clear that we will be funding middle and smaller size community colleges where we have funded large systems up to now. And so our funds will be utilized to expand and scale the work that we have learned is working in the state in terms of the improvement and total redesign of developmental education. We also have to have an evaluation of that work, and so the second part of this contract will be to extend that evaluation as we increase the number of programs out there. We also are working right now based on our statute, House Bill 1244, which gives us the foundation for the total redesign of DevEd. We are looking at rules that will help us expand this so that it takes over across the state. That presents my item, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Dr. Loreto. At this time, the chair would entertain any additional questions or comments concerning this agenda item. If there be none, the chair would entertain a motion that we adopt the staff recommendations to the committee relating to approval to issue a request for applications regarding the new developmental education demonstration projects and either extend current evaluation contracts or issue requests for applications for evaluation of programs. Do I hear a motion? It's been moved, seconded. Second. It's been moved and seconded. All indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any disagree? Motion passes. We now will move to agenda item 6D, consideration of adopting the staff recommendation to the committee relating to approval to issue a request for proposals for the development and implementation of professional development program supporting the integrated reading writing model for students not college ready, that are not college ready, and to issue a request for applications to secure a contract to do the evaluation. Chair recognizes Dr. Judy Laredo.
This training program is specifically targeted at helping institutions across the state implement the utilization or the combining of reading and writing instruction in the preparation of students who are not ready in developmental education in those areas. Typically across the state you have found programs before that separated the teaching of reading and the teaching of writing. Well, it's only logical that reading and writing go hand in hand. And so what we have found from our demonstration projects, that combination of that reading and writing instruction has made and does make a difference. It does require training. It is a different model from how faculty have operated. We would like to put out the RFP in order to secure the training that would be done statewide to implement the integration of reading and writing in our developmental education redesign of that curriculum. We would also like permission to seek applications for that entity that would be evaluating the work of that training that goes on statewide. That concludes my presentation.
Judy, was that was 6B, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. That concludes the report on action item 6B. Is there any questions or comments? I'm sorry, 6.
Black and David, yeah.
Okay, one page back. 6D, if there be no questions or comments at this time, the chair would entertain a motion that would adopt the recommendation to the committee. I'm not going through the verbiage. If it's agreeable to everyone else, do I hear that motion?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Agenda item 6E, consideration of adopting the staff recommendation to the committee relating to approval of an amendment to extend the contract and increase funding for technical assistance to comprehensive student success program sites. Dr. Kristen Kramer, Director of Success Initiatives, is available to answer questions. Does the committee have any questions at this time?
I would like to add something, and maybe then Dr. Kramer may want to speak, but Dr. Kramer created the design of this program 2 years ago, her and her staff, which we then funded through CACG, and I think it's proven to be a really important program, especially as we talk about student success. What we have, as you looked at the numbers that Susan Brown showed you, where students are showing, some, especially the Latino students, are showing succession and completing their degrees. What this program has caused institutions to do is to really look at themselves and say, what is it that's going wrong for us that students aren't completing? What are things that we can put in place? And even though we funded a small group to start out with, and even the same size group the second time around, I'd like for her to mention to you, talk to you about what has resulted in terms not only of the technical support, but the institutes that she has had the last 2 summers and the response we've had from institutions unfunded.
I'll try to be brief. We do have the CACG funded sites working on improving student success on their campuses. This item is for technical assistance of those sites. U of H hosted and dealt with all the logistics and bringing in the experts to work with our sites. This year we had George Koo on site, and later, just actually about 2 weeks ago, we had Vasti Torres, and Don Wood, the latter is from Odessa College, and they worked with the group in really looking at data and how do you use data to drive an evidence-based program on your campus and really look at where we need to make improvements. This summer, at the end of July, no, middle of July, coming up, we are also hosting a student success conference, 2 days, and we're bringing in, I think we have 250 registrants. We had to cap it because we were running out of money. But there's a lot of interest out there. We have majority of the institutions registered, sending about five folks each, and we're going to be discussing first-year seminar and also faculty engagement.
Any comments or questions for Dr. Kramer at this point? If not, Mayor, may I have a motion to adopt the staff recommendation to the committee relating to approval of an amendment to extend the contract and increase funding for technical assistance to comprehensive student success program sites. Chair now entertains that motion.
Moved.
It's been moved. Do I hear a second? Second. Moved and second. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Agenda 6F is consideration of adopting the staff recommendation to the committee relating to approval of an additional year of funding for participating AVID post-secondary institutions of higher education and amending the extending the contract for external evaluation. Chair recognizes Dr. Judy Laredo.
This is a continuation, a small, very small bucket of continuation with the AVID program, because we have found that in the teacher training or redesigning of how teachers deliver instruction, especially to incoming freshmen, has been quite profitable. What we would like to do is to extend to those 18 institutions an additional $10,000 for continued participation in that training. And then we have 2 new institutions that we would like to fund only for the training. We've also got to expand our contract with the Gibson Group because of the evaluation design that we have included in our AVID program, because we want to evaluate the continuation of this training as it goes on. That concludes my presentation.
Any questions or comments on the part of this committee? May I have a motion to adopt the staff recommendation to the committee relating to approval of additional year of funding for participating AVID post-secondary institutions of higher education and amending and existing the contracts for external evaluation. Do I hear that motion? It's been moved, seconded. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Thank you, Judy. We'll move on to agenda item 6G, consideration of adopting the Commissioner's recommendation to the committee to submit a grant application for the 2012-2013 College Access Challenge Grant and to extend funds awarded to the coordinating board. Dr. Judy Laredo has the floor.
Let me begin by saying I wanted to correct it. In here, it indicates that you have the application. When we did the blue page, we had hoped that we would have that application, but we've just gotten the guidelines from the federal government. But we wanted to ask permission to submit our application, which we have received over the last 4 years, the CACG grant. We have received in the past, this past year, we received $11,820,000. We don't have the final award of that amount of money yet. We do anticipate that it is going to go up a slight amount because of the poverty level number in our state, because it's a state formula is how the money is awarded. But in submitting this application, you will receive the full application at the board meeting for you to totally have seen and reviewed. But the application goes into the federal government. It has to be there by July the 5th. And so it will be reviewed by the leadership and the commissioner before it is submitted. We have met with the commissioner and the leadership on the items that we want to continue addressing in this grant application that we have been addressing in this past year. That being the College Advising Corps. You know, those are the students that are placed out in the field. We will continue to implement that program across the state. our comprehensive student success program services that Dr. Kramer just spoke to you about. We have 11 programs currently funded. We would like to continue that work with another round. Our adult completion program that Dr. Van Davies has overseen this past year, we want to expand that, the number of institutions who are helping adults complete their degrees. And Generation Texas, we have currently had the contract with Milkshake Media. We will not be extending a contract anymore. We're at the end of that, but we would like to continue our work with our P16 councils, those who were currently funded this past year with a small amount of seed money to finish their work if evaluation shows they've done well. And then we would like to target parts of the state that have not received funding to help us expand Generation Texas across the state with that sustainability. We also will need permission in terms of the evaluation of this grant, so that's to extend the contract or secure a new contractor for the evaluation of our CACG work into this next coming fiscal year.
So do you plan to have a different media company, or you're just going to reallocate that money?
It will be extended. It's what we're going to do is extend it. No, we're not going to use another media company. What we have done, one of the stipulations in the Milkshake Media contract was the sustainability plan that we will then implement in order to ensure that we have moved this into the state and it becomes a fabric of our school systems. So that's part of their component that they will deliver to us before the end of their contract, which I think ends in October.
Okay.
And we've already been in dialogue with them about sustainability and as they develop their plan.
I move to accept.
Motion's been made, seconded. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. We now move to agenda item 6H, consideration of adopting the Commissioner's recommendation to the committee relating to the amendment to Chapter 4, subsection C, Section 4.57 of the Board Rules, and the new Section 4.62 of Board Rules concerning Texas Success Initiative. Is there any staff comment regarding this?
We posted the rules. As indicated, it is required a 30-day posting for the two components, one that speaks to the fact of a single test with a single assessment, and then the second part that speaks to House Bill 1244, which specifies the specific components that must be addressed by institutions in terms of the total redesign of the developmental education initiatives. In the 30-day posting, we only received one comment, and indicated in the blue page, and you were given a revised sheet because we added the comments. Only one institution responded by the fact that they realized that we had taken directly from the statute, from the bill, those components. And then secondly, in terms of the date for implementing the one test and the one standard, we don't speak to that in the rules. But what we will be doing by June the 29th, a letter has been prepared. It has been routed for approval to be sent out to the institutions, identifying the actual start date from where that test will be required and the one cut score, not allowing institutions to go above that. The institution raised concern that they feel that it's going to cost money in order to implement this redesign in developmental education. What we are currently doing, along with Susan Brown's staff, is looking at the current funding that institutions are receiving based on their formula, based on the number of students, and looking at what the implications are in terms of funding if it, in fact, will cost more for institutions to implement a total redesigned program. So we will be responding to their concerns, and they have been notified as to what our response is, and that's what you have in your blue page. That's my presentation.
Any other additional comments or questions? If not, the chair would entertain a motion to adopt the staff recommendations to the committee relating to amendments to Chapter 4, Chapter C, Section 4.5 of Board Rules and new Section 4.62 of Board Rules concerning Texas Student Success Initiative.
So moved.
Moved and seconded. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. We'll now move to agenda item 6I. Consideration of adopting the staff recommendation to the committee relating to approval to issue a request for applications for the development and implementation of one or more science, technology, engineering, math teacher preparation centers at public institutions of higher education, and a separate competitive solicitation for evaluation of the centers. Chair recognizes Dr. Judy Laredo.
Over the last few years, under the leadership both of Dr. Susan Barnes, who used to be with us, and Dr. Araceli Ortiz, and Dr. Ortiz has been the major leader in terms of our work in the math, science, technology arena, also by virtue of her own training in engineering. But we have had we've had a lot of money and resources put into the advancement of teachers in this area, and have trained, not only retrained many teachers, but also helped teachers complete their master's degrees in this field. And so to advance that work, because of the critical shortage and need, under the RFA, the purpose and the goal would be to establish technology, engineering, and math teacher preparation centers, up to 1 or 2 across the state, that would support the development of a greater number of better prepared public school teachers in the STEM field. Secondly, hopefully to influence the enrichment of teacher curriculum and professional learning with more content, pedagogy, rich technology, and cognitive development coursework that advances what they do in the classroom. This is one of the key areas also in the college and career readiness standards, in that total increase of the rigor that is required in that curriculum. And we hope to be able to facilitate a collaborative effort that supports the implementation of the best practices possible that can be brought into the classroom that advance students' understanding and knowledge in these areas. The grantee who is awarded, or the grantee selected, would be establishing what we call STEM teacher preparation centers to provide faculty-led professional learning for in-service teachers currently in the field, mid-career degree individuals, to prepare them as teachers to serve all Texas students. It will also, they will be required to coordinate related statewide research and serve as experts in related policy development within this area. And the most important thing, because of the population of this state, within our school systems, our purpose is to have these centers focus their efforts on serving a diverse and economically disadvantaged student population, so that the teachers who are teaching in these schools where that population is high, they are better prepared how to deliver a difficult content area for some students to internalize. Not that they can't learn it, but many times the teaching has to be redesigned so that what might have been difficult before, for example, in the math area, which we've learned with our focus program, students who feared something before find a pleasure in it. So it's really to be able to help teachers become better at what they do in a critical area of instruction that this state needs.
Motion's been made. Do I hear a second? Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Motion carries. Item Agenda J, consideration of adopting staff recommendation to the committee relating to approval of an amendment to extend certain contracts for educator preparation demonstration sites and to provide additional funding for such contracts as well as for supporting evaluation contracts. Chair recognizes Dr. Judy Laredo.
We currently have 2 programs that have been funded and working on this in the last 2 years, and if I'm not mistaken, we have an evaluation meeting tomorrow. The evaluators will be presenting to the staff, Dr. Gardner included, the results of what they have found in our redesign. Stephen F. Austin State University and Texas A&M University were the 2 institutions that were funded 2 years ago in order to totally redesign the delivery of teacher preparation. We would like to extend their grant funding to the grantees at this time, because based on the evaluation results, we find that we could be able to get some additional work from them, and that would include the money that we will use will be providing support for continued self-assessment tools that will be utilized by the institutions in the delivery of the teacher prep program, and also to act as a guide for project resources, the development of resources that they have found has worked in the delivery or preparation of teachers. And we'd like to also extend the contract for the replication of this work to carry this across the state to Texas State University. And the total amount of this grant award would be, if you noticed on the back from what the original project was, is $180,000. We brought it back to you because it does exceed the 10% of the allocated amount originally approved. That's it, Dr. Golden.
It's been made, the motion's been made for approval. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? There is none. Motion passes. We're down to the very last action item on the agenda. And I want to thank the board and the staff for staying and acting on these agenda items.
I think we have one more.
Yeah, we've got one more. We've got K, but I know this is not probably quite as exciting as fun as some of the other things that we do in our committees, but they are necessary in order to move the operation of the agency forward. So we do have one more agenda item, K, and it's consideration of adopting the staff recommendation to the committee relating to adoption of a new memorandum of understanding between the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board and College for All Texans Foundation, Closing the Gap. Nina Wright, Executive Director, College for All Texans Foundation, will be available to answer any questions about the proposed Coordinating Board Foundation MOU. As I understand it, this is something that needs to be approved every 10 years, and we are now at that 10-year mark in which this board has to approve this. I think the Foundation for All Texans was set up under the Closing the Gap Committee. Therefore, it falls within our committee responsibility to hear the recommendation and then forward it to the board for final approval. Does the board have any questions or comments that they would like to direct, or would you have any comments that you would like to make to the committee at this time?
Well, I would mention, Dr. Golden, that after we mailed out the blue pages, that the version of the MOU that you received, we got additional comments, and so there have been 2 changes. I believe you received the new version. It was but just so you know where those changes were, it was under definition of relationship 2. Or no, it was under 3, resolution of conflicts or disputes. We replaced Commissioner of Higher Education with
Chairman of the board.
With the chairman, right, with the chairman or his designee. And then under use of funds, number 1, we added or any subsequent plan after closing the gaps. So minor changes, but
This foundation, I think, if I'm not mistaken, was chartered by or at least it's an independent foundation that assists the agency and with independent funds
right.
that are often used to benefit higher education in the state of Texas. It's totally and completely independent of this board, other than
well, it's controlled by this board because a majority of the trustees for the foundation are appointed by the chairman of the coordinating board.
Okay. But it is independent of the board in the sense that it has its own board, its own agency, and on executive director, and so on and so forth. Correct?
Right.
Okay. Everybody clear on that?
Yep.
All we're doing is authorizing the reapproval of the first 10-year contract or 10-year continuation of the foundation, correct?
Or this MOU, right?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I make the motion.
Motion's been made. Do I hear a second? Moved and second. All in favor indicate.
I have a question on this, if you don't mind. So under item 3, you would have the chairman of the THECB, if they were the chairman of the foundation, negotiating with the vice chairman of the THECB? Okay, do I read that wrong, Bill?
You're correct, I think. That's the.
I think you're correct, Dr. Tesher. In the event the chairman of the THECB is the chairman of the foundation, it would be the chairman of the THECB negotiating on behalf of the foundation, if you will, with the vice chairman of the THECB on behalf of the THECB. It is an unlikely scenario to ever occur, but nonetheless, that could be the result.
It would seem to be a conflict-saturated environment if that was to happen. Can we think about alternatives to that? And I understand the unlikeliness of it, but has the chairman of THECB ever served as the chairman of the foundation?
Not to my knowledge.
Are they permitted to serve as both?
I checked the bylaws and there is no prohibition.
Well, if we were to adopt this, I would almost ask that we, as a THECB, prohibit our chairman from ever being the chairman of the foundation, if that's the case.
I agree. I think that would be a good move, just to, there's no reason not to, to avoid any potential conflict down the line.
In other words, it would be the chairman of the THECB or his designee if he or she was not able to serve. But I think we have to go back and say this would be a very difficult situation for two people who have had to get along to try to resolve a conflict in the best interest of two parties. I guess this is the if we decide to get divorced kind of clause.
Frankly, if we get to the point where there are contentious negotiations between the two, the relationship is probably at an end anyway, as a practical matter, because the chairman of the THECB appoints a simple majority of the board of the foundation.
Mm-hmm. So is that something we can change here on the fly to address that?
We would have to ask the foundation to change its bylaws to preclude the chairman of the THECB to not be able to serve as the chairman of the foundation at the same time he or she would be serving as the chair of the coordinating board.
Is that a reasonable thing for us to ask them to do, in your legal opinion?
I don't think they would take umbrage at that. I think it's a reasonable thing to ask.
Commissioner, you have a thought on that?
I think it's a good idea.
So, Dennis, I don't know how I make a motion to amend the original motion, but maybe what we do is adopt this and then...
Let me withdraw my motion.
You really can't, but I can amend it.
Why can't I withdraw my motion?
Because you don't own it once it's been seconded, it belongs to the body.
You're right.
So
Okay.
I'll make a motion to amend the original motion that we have that language in that first sentence cleaned up a bit, but that we also take a secondary motion to ask the foundation to institute a policy or in its bylaws to prohibit the chairman of the THECB from being the chairman of the foundation to avoid this conflict.
Is everyone in agreement with that proposed amendment to the...
Need a second.
Needs a second. It's been moved. Do I hear a second to that?
Second.
Second. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so we have an agreement that we're fixing to now vote on. Okay? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Good job.
All right.
Okay, last agenda item is adjournment. Now, if anybody hesitates to make a motion to adjourn, I'm going to be really...
I'll move it
okay.
too.
It's been moved, seconded. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Committee meeting has been adjourned. Thank you.
Whatever you need.
Good job.
Got it.